I'm here with Ton Wesseling. Ton, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Juliana?
Extraordinary. I'm not looking for school starting next week, but for those of you that live under a rock and or have been living in a cage for the last 12 years, Tan is known for being the founding father of online dialogue, and he has more than 20 years of experience in online optimization and is recognized worldwide as an influential thinker, writer, public speaker on conversion optimization and A/B testing. Or you can probably recognize Tan from his A/B testing course on CXO that's been giving students nightmares for for a long time, me including. It was a very hard hard final exam. Tan, I'm so excited to have you here today with me.
Thank you very much for having me. And of course, you know the course because you have been taking the course and, of course, been managing courses at CXL. I like the fact that it's not a easy course to take.
Oh,
It's I think 5 hours and 20 minutes of video. So it's long. It covers a lot. It's not just A/B testing. It's the whole research process and how to get
yes.
more money from your experiments or more better results. And of course, then if you do the exam, it doesn't make sense to have an easy exam. So the
Oh, for
exam is tough, and I know lots of people have taken it like 2 or 3 times. But if you repeat it and repeat it 5 times, then the knowledge will be there in implemented in your brain, which is a good thing. So I always I'm really happy for people that brag on LinkedIn that they did the course and they passed it because it's not an easy course to take. So it's but I like that. Well, why make it easy? We all want to be better, and it takes time.
A/B testing is not easy either. So we just recently, I ran this UX survey for students, and mostly everybody, it was like people that were taking CRO courses, and people were saying, we came for Tan's course. We came for Tan's course. So your course is very, even if it's difficult, it's actually very popular. And I think it's one of the best courses that I've seen out there because it has what you said, everything about the concept. No! I forgot you have this the effects, but yeah, it's a good course, and I wanted to tell people that I had the chance and honor to meet you in Copenhagen at Measure Camp, and it was very, very, very interesting and exciting for me to meet you because I've been knowing you from the internet. And for everyone watching, they should go to an event where you're speaking or where you're there and just have the chance to have a conversation with you because you are very, very interesting to hang out with. And that's me limiting my bragging and my fangirl moments right now. That's me being, calm about this. I wanted you to come today because I want to talk about a few things that involve experimentation, CRO data, and so on. But first, tell me, how did you get into this world? Tim Stewart, I had him in my podcast some time ago, and he's also, I think there's a lot of people in our, industry or in our, sector that have been doing music. So Tim told me that you used to be a DJ, which explains why you have this swag. Because people in experimentation do not have as much swag as you do. So I want to know how. Tell me about that.
But before you start to look me like turn red or something for all the compliments, thank you. It was a pleasure to finally meet you in Copenhagen, also in person. You're a special person too, Juliana. Don't forget about that when you look up to other people. It was great to meet you. But how did I end up in the conversion optimization or experimentation business? And how did I went there from music? Of course, I started DJing like in my youth, like whatever, 14, 15, I can't really remember. I'm old. I'm born in 74. So like in 88, 89, you had this big movement of underground, like techno music, new beat acid music. And it really intrigued me. And if you looked at it, if you listen to those first techno songs, you will know it's almost like programming. You are programming music. That's what you do. And I always loved mathematics in school. Maybe I'm a strange person, but the structure and the functional approach is a lot of ratio involved, a lot of brain power thinking, which I liked. So when this techno music came up, you also had your first programs on the computer, like Cubase on the Commodore and the Amiga, which is like really old stuff way before the personal computer. And I was lucky that my dad was, as a hobby, was working with computers. So we had a computer. I had a music program, so I can create my own music and start making techno music, and of course then start making records, playing records, DJ, and that evolved into a lot of music playing, lots of radio shows, and this went on to like I was like 21, 22, 23 or something. I was already in university back then. And I think in those first 4 years at university, I was able to get enough points to go through my first year, because of all the time I spent with music. And of course, if you play in a club, it will be like from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. And that's not really a good thing if you have a class the next morning. But in the meantime, at university, they had the first web browsers. And I really liked to play around with HTML. And of course, I created my first little website for my radio show back then. And what I immediately liked about having a website is when you host it on your own web server, you can see the data, you can see the numbers. And the same as I was playing music in a club at night, I'm trying to entertain people, to tell a story, and your success rate is the number of people on the dance floor, number of people cheering, and then you try to optimize your set. And I was starting to do the same thing with my website, trying to optimize the website with just simple things, shuffling around content to see what happens to the number of clicks and so on. And at some point, back in those days, as a DJ, you could not make a lot of money. It was a decent living, way better than a student living, but it's not like the current days. And at some point, I had to choose between or stay in this underground movement, seeing a lot of people around me getting addicted to all sorts of drugs, which was not, they had fun, but it was like short life fun. So at some point I said, I'm going to finish my education. So that's what I did. And I really want to start working with websites because I had the same fun building websites and then optimizing it for the audience as I had with playing my music. And I also didn't really like the fact that music became work and was not a hobby anymore. So I was hoping for that music became a hobby again and that my work would be websites. So I finished education, and that was like the late 90s. I think I studied for like 7 or 8 years before I finished. And then in the late 90s, internet was booming. So after graduation, I just looked for an internet startup. And work from there. And my passion has always I like to build websites, so I can develop stuff. But my coding skills are like from the old days. I know Perl, I know Java, PHP, that kind of stuff. But it's been a while since I developed my own websites. But I really immediately dove into the statistical part. Okay, I want to work for an internet publisher and to see lots of data and how can we optimize this, and started running my first experiments because at some point I was taught that just implementing stuff and look at the results after it's implemented is like not the best way. It makes more sense to run a split test, A/B experiment. So and then with the JavaScript redirects, and then it evolved. So I think I started doing split testing at the publisher where I started working. I think back in 2001, 2002. So that's 20 years ago. But I still like it a lot. Made all the mistakes, but well, the web grew, number of visitors grew, and at some point, just you turn out to be an expert just because the fact that you had 10 years time to make all the mistakes you can make, and then you get invited to go on stage and to present about your stories. Which was again fascinating because it almost feels like the DJ days where you're on stage doing a performance than keynoting on stage. So that makes a circle around. But I think I see a lot of combined passion for music programmers, techno music programmers, website developers, and analytics people, because I think it's the same kind of stuff you're doing. And if you have this optimization mindset, because to me, some people just have it, some people don't. I think that's just part of the DNA who you are. I always want to optimize stuff to make it better. Probably has to do with some childhood issues or something that's caused this. But that's what I really like. So this is how I moved from being a DJ. And I get a lot of questions. Do you regret stopping as a DJ at 23? Because I've played with guys like Tiesto back in those old days, which were still small DJs back then. Like I was in a different league compared to Tiesto back then. He was just starting, but his music choice was already really, really good, and he was a way better producer than I am. So I've seen guys really grow up to become the big rock stars, which is kind of fascinating. But I don't regret it at all. I am really happy with the decisions I made, and I still love this work, and I still have music as a hobby.
I love Tiesto, by the way. He came to Romania years ago when I was like in high school, and I went to his concert, and it was like nothing I've ever seen before. I love his music, and
Yeah.
that he had that one song Adagio for strings that was like perfect for me. Yeah.
Yeah. My problem is I'm not. I've never learned to play the piano or something. So also I don't have a perfect hearing sound for the right tone. So if you compare those DJs of that league nowadays to what they are able to do with music, it's so much different than what I could do. Compared to them, I was just a hobbyist.
First of all, I want to unpack something there. Like you were saying that developers and music producers and people that want to optimize things are following different steps to make sure they improve something. But it's also because they want to give something back to people, and they are improving it to make people happier or more interested and so on. When it comes to I'm thinking about this experiment. If you remember, there was this experiment in a lab where they put two rats in a cage, and one rat was giving constant food as long as he was pressing a pedal, and the other one was just getting food randomly, but it was more food than the other rat. So the one rat was clicking that was beating the button constantly but was getting less food, but it was the rush of being able to do you're doing something is, and that was used to build social media, was used to build casino games and everything, like us having the you know obsession. So when you're optimizing websites and now, right, where, and this is a question that just came to my head, where do you stand in how fair, right, or how where do you stand where it's when we're talking about fairness and making sure that you protect people from not having to do extreme things on the website, protecting your clients but also your clients, because there's so many people that are doing so much crazy shit in optimization that it like websites nowadays look like arcades in video games.
Yeah, it's a really good question because this is like an ethical discussion. And I think the main problem here is that the more data you have, the more you can learn about behavior. And especially with A/B testing, experimentation, the speed of learning about human behavior at companies that have lots of data is nowadays so much bigger than universities ever had with doing those lab studies with rats and so on. So they are really learning fast how to motivate people, how to influence people. And of course, there is this gray area where it comes in misleading or abusing the power you're having, and that one individual is not able to learn fast enough to compete this. And if you ask like the big professors in behavioral science, like if you ask Daniel Kahneman, like you've done all these studies, so you really know how the brain works. So if you, you probably are never influenced again by an advertiser with something. And then he says, no, but of course I know how this stuff works, but I cannot stop it. It's just part of how my brain functions. So I can also be influenced by advertisers and make the wrong decision for myself on the long term just based on their communication. So it's a tough question because as optimizers we are helping the companies and we're not helping the individuals. We're not helping the consumer. But yeah, it's I think that the underlying problem is way bigger than something to discuss in this podcast. Like the capitalist continuous going for growth worlds, and I see some slight changes happening, but it will take time. But I think the good thing about experimentation, optimization, A/B testing is that at least if you're taking this approach at companies where you're studying behavior, so you really understand how you're influencing people and documenting this. I think that's already way better than a company not documenting it, just implementing it and trying to whatever do what they do. And hopefully the public is allowing these companies to share this with science. Because I think one of the bad things that happened already 6 or 7 years ago, where Facebook published this experiment where they tried to understand the difference between posting, if you explain it easily, happy news in your timeline and more sad news in your timeline. And what does it do with your own postings? Do you become more happy or less happy if you have a different timeline? Did a large study. They published a study, which is really interesting and fascinating for human behavior studies. But it backfired. Like the public was, wow, you're manipulating me. You're influencing my behavior. That's not something you can do without consent, which I agree. They probably asked for consent somewhere at the sign up, which is like a long form of 67 pages where you just click agree. But they should have made it more clear. And what happened is, of course, Facebook continued experimenting and understanding behavior, but they stopped publishing this in public, which is a bad thing. So, and I think the good thing in companies are getting more public. The power of social media, which also has a bad side, is that if you do something wrong as a company, people will tell, people will know. So losing trust is really a bad thing. So companies are getting more cautious about this. So they probably will start having a ethical board that will review experiments where you don't feel at ease. And if you look in the agency I founded, we have this ethical code that's for every employee and also for every client to sign. But this code is also saying if you as an employee don't agree with something you are asked to do or a client is asked to do, you can just say, I don't want to do this and report it and so on. You will not be fired or whatsoever. You should not do something you don't want to do. And this limit is different. This border is different for anyone. But I see good steps being taken. I think that's the only way to go. And probably there will always be companies that are in a market where something is way more gray or almost black from a ethical perspective. And they were there also in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. I think social media PR storms made it better. So companies are more aware of this issue now. But indeed, it's we are just helping companies, and of course we deny certain clients that are in certain areas where it can be very addicted. And then other companies will help them, but it doesn't move us forward to help them anyway. We just don't take them as a client. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I think once the economy and the world market is not focusing on growing in money anymore,
Yeah.
but growing in the amount of time we are allowed to spend on this planet, of like equal happiness for everyone, and those KPIs will make it a different ballgame.
I like it. And also, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just sometimes when I have this thing when I speak to somebody and then something takes me on a total different framing of the situation. It's just super interesting. I've been reading a lot about this, and it kind of sets the tone to what I wanted to ask you. I recorded in the first season of the podcast an episode with Shivan Solberg, and it was entirely dedicated to talk about Cialdini's persuasions principles. And we broke all of them down, including unity, which is all of them combined, If you're a listener, you don't know what those principles are, check the episode with Shivan or just Google it. But I wanted to ask you, because you have so much experience and you've been in CRO experimentation, A/B testing since the beginning. Tell me if those principles can are still valid when it comes to the user behavior online as it is right now, because there were so many changes that happened in the last years. There were people that never shopped online that were shopping online. People that didn't have the same frequency of shopping online increased that frequency. So every time something like, something big happens, involves a lot of changes, and now people are trying to go back to their behavior pre-COVID, for instance. But a lot of people, myself included, I'm better with just online. So, like, can you still use Cialdini's principles with the same level of success as you would in 2015, for instance?
To me, yes. Like the Cialdini principles. I'm not sure when the book was first published, but I think it's like the 60s, 70s, or 80s, like long time ago, like many years ago. If you see Cialdini, you will know this book is from a long time ago. Um, Heavily backed up with research. These are like basic principles in marketing or communication. So like commitment and consistency, that's something that will never go away. It works. The same as authority, scarcity, those stuff works. Of course, people are being trained to ignore certain marketing messaging. So if you take a website like Booking.com, who's famous for their using of persuasion techniques on the user, if you look at them through the time of the last like 10 or 15 years, you will see that they continuously experiment. So they're changing. And I believe, at least in my perception of Booking.com and my personalized area, maybe it's different for you, I don't know, that the amount of persuasion power is reduced. So it could be with people being more aware of how the internet works, and that they are less responding to there's only two rooms left, scarcity principle, or this hotel was also booked by Obama or whatsoever, whatever you can use. So I see less of that. That could be because I'm blind. It could be because they changed it. So this is why experimentation never ends. People will train themselves and teach themselves, but still they will be influenced by these principles. It works still. Scarcity works. It is not an approach I'm using, because in the end, I believe it's more about optimizing the full user behavior, the full journey they're going through. And in that journey, you can apply certain techniques at certain areas. I would never recommend to just copy principles of Cialdini and just test them anywhere you would like. You have to do research on your user, and then the four main principles, or it's even five, we're using at the agency, which is designed by the consumer behavior team at Online Dialogue. It's all about ability. You should be able to at least do the tasks you want to do. And please don't ignore the fact that, like, I think 10% of male has some sort of color blindness, so ability can also be an issue over there. And then once there is the ability to do something, then you can start to motivate them or add certainty. And if you add this, there has to be some attention, so at least they're aware of the certainty or motivation you're using. And that combined with choice architecture is getting you to guide the user to the next steps, and make the right decision for you as an organization and for the user, him or herself. And then what you want to do is you want to continuously measure what kind of main principles are effective on what's part of the customer journey. So you create this feedback loop of continuously this principle or this main thought is not working over here, but it's working over here. So let's continue over there to have a better success. So I think it's all about feedback, and this Cialdini principles are fun, but I think there are more and better tailored approaches on the web. I believe the BJ Fogg model of
That's exactly what I wanted to tell you. You're using the
ability
BJ.
triggers motivation. is already a better model.
Oh yeah.
Um, but there are so many techniques you can use. But we split them in ability, motivation, attention, certainty, and choice architecture. That are our main 5 topics we use to optimize websites on task completion.
And I like certainty too. That's a very good one because people have huge cognitive dissonance when they're buying, especially for the first time. So you need to make them feel, safe, certain that this is the decision. I really like the BJ Fogg model a lot
Yeah.
because sometimes you increase the friction to increase motivation, or like there's a lot of things you can do, and ability obviously is very important. I actually wanted to ask you, um, you were mentioning booking. I'm thinking about Amazon, like all this best practices conversation. I don't want to get into that one, but I wanna ask, like, do you think convenience has become a very, very strong principle to get people to be able to do stuff? Because I feel like you can do a lot of pop-ups and colors and cute
Uh,
stuff, but being convenient to buy from somebody or buy something. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I do believe that usability is really important. So ease of use. So make it really easy to buy something. I believe if you go back to the beginning of the iPhone, when there was a new iPhone launch, like the iPhone 3 or 4, whatever they had, it didn't really matter how bad the sign up form was at the Apple website because they were really, really bad. Everyone wanted to have this iPhone. If you went to that website, the only reason to go there was just to buy the iPhone. And even if there was like a 27 steps form, you would complete it because you're really dedicated to get the iPhone. It's good to have a good product or service that people want to have. That helps a lot. But I think now, if you go fast forward to these days, which is like 15 years past the introduction of the first iPhone, attention span of users is a lot shorter. That's my like biased observation, not backed up by research. But if I look at experiments, if you make it more easy, like don't make me think, Steve Krug principle, that's really helping because to me it seems like if you now have a 27 pages form on buying an iPhone, people will just stop and don't do it because it's like too much effort. And of course, we are in the attention economy, and everyone is asking for attention. So it's known that it really is exhausting your brain because the amount of thinking power you have for one day is just limited. At some point, you are too tired to make decisions. So to make it really easy, it really helps. So, or you should have the product everyone wants to have, but then still, I don't believe anymore that a stupid form will not kill the conversion to the product. So it should be a good product everyone has to have, and also really easy to buy it. So I think that's what's changing in persuading users to buy.
I like it. And I like that you mentioned BJ Fogg because I really think that model is better than, I mean, nothing wrong with Cialdini's work. I think it's essential to marketing in general. But when it comes to optimizing websites, I think there are better version of, and more ethical because we were, of course, this
Just
person.
continue. It's just a motorcycle going by.
Yeah, it's just a motorcycle. Yeah, it's the struggles. Talking about struggles, I remember struggles for me because I'm gonna get into a statistics conversation, so it's gonna be struggles for me. I heard you in a podcast. I think it was with Valentin back when I was working at OmniConvert, that you were talking about evidence-based growth, which of course is ideal. But how does one defeat their own biases when looking at data? How are you? I think even me right now that I'm learning more about this and I'm taking this statistics courses and trying to learn R and so on, I catch myself being so crazy biased about different things, right? So it's so hard to be able to distinguish, okay, this data, what this data is telling me it's an opportunity versus what this data is telling me is a threat, because sometimes you're so biased and so excited about stuff that you just want to do it. So Cassie Kazirko from Google said a person without data is a person with an opinion, but also a person that has data is still a person with an opinion. So, what are your thoughts? Like, how can someone like me, for instance, or how someone like anyone can put those biases to sleep and just have a very good, and I'm using this word fair a lot lately, I don't know what's wrong with me, but just have a fair look at their data and be able to distinguish between opportunity and threat.
This is why we run experiments, because in the end, of course, you want to go from data to insights and then to action. And going from data to insights, there is like someone in between that has this subjective look at the data. So it's a biased look. And of course, some people will be better in have a more objective look. And some people will be worse in this, but it will always be biased. Somehow. But mostly it's just input. These insights are input to take action. And that action is, of course, validated by an experiment, unless you're like a real startup and then you don't have the data to run online controlled experiments, but you can still do other types of experiments. And then if you look at the experiment results, at some point you will start to understand which input sources for this experiment are more successful than other input sources. And if all the input from the data analyst or one data analyst, if you're just one person, is not leading to any difference or any effect, then something is wrong in translating the data to insights. And to me, a good analyst is always open to feedback and is probably really intrigued by the finding that their insights are not leading to success, because then we'll start asking, okay, what's wrong here? What's going on? I want to try to optimize this stuff, so I gotta have a new approach. Of course, you can take the time to have feedback on your data to insights translation and mirror it with other peers. But to me, that's only like more meetings, more time. Doesn't make sense. We want to move forward. So just get your insights, build stuff, validate it before you ship it, and then learn what has a big effect and what not. It's the same like I explained with the psychological principles we are using. We want to learn which category has the biggest effect. So continuously gather this feedback to understand what's hitting and makes you grow and what not.
Do you think people should experiment or test everything?
No, I
Tell
do
me more
believe
on that.
that every line of code should be validated if you have the data to validate it. But this is not looking for growth. This is looking for not implementing stuff that's hurting the business or hurting the organization. And if you do experiment, to me, experimentation is more like the research part, where you're trying to learn about behavior or certain elements or features or whatsoever. That's being used to build bigger stuff, and that's being shipped with a validation part in that. So when running experiments, you want to run experiments that are potentially successful. So just experiment everything you can experiment. Of course, sometimes you will shoot the rabbits, because if you start to hunt for rabbits and shoot like big spray, you will hit something. Texas sharpshooter fallacy. This is. But it's way better to just do research, look at previous experiments, look at data, look at customer interviews, user research, go to the call center, talk to people, talk to the product owners, whatever you can do, collect information and use that to prioritize what you'll be experimenting on. And then even in prioritization, you have all these models out there, but most of these models have subjective metrics to do prioritization. So hopefully at some point you are able to have a model that's backed up with a double feedback loop of previous validations and what research is working, what principles are working, and then you will become better and better. But you need to focus. You have to make decisions on what you're going to be experimenting on and what not. It doesn't make sense to experiment on everything because you don't have the time to experiment on everything.
I like how you said that experimentation should be thought of as research. I never heard nobody said that, and I think it's really awesome. I'm gonna quote you on that. I like that. I think that's the best version of experimentation that I heard, because I heard that there's so many definitions. for experimentation, for optimization, for conversion rate optimization. Like sometimes I don't even know what they refer to anymore.
I'm using experimentation and validation. So validation for me is when code is shipped, that should be shipped as an experiment. Because if you look at a IT department or like engineering department in a digital company or every company, when they ship stuff, they always run experiments on security, on performance, on bugs or whatsoever. But they should also measure influence on user behavior, which they mostly don't do. But if they do this and they don't see negative effects, they can ship it, which is validation, not experimentation. Something is built, ships, and experimentation is more upfront. It's like the research part where you're trying to understand about user behavior, and it's the strongest weapon you have. If you look in the hierarchy of evidence, of course, user testing is valuable, user interviews is valuable, data looks is valuable, and so on. Studying scientific reports from universities also valuable. Even expert opinions could be valuable, but the quality of evidence is way lower. The highest quality of evidence is experimentation. So just run lots of experiments. It's even I get this question a lot where people ask me, should I do like move away from client side testing to server side testing? Because of all these issues with browsers and cookies, GDPR, whatsoever, I want to go server side testing, more in control than client side testing. And I'm like, why is this like or discussion? Server side testing completely makes sense for validation because stuff is already built. You can use feature toggles to ship it. But if you have this research department or product team or marketing team that fastly wants to learn if something is working, give them a client-side solution that they can use themselves quite quickly in a nasty way to understand if they're looking in the right direction. So use both approaches because there are different goals when you use them.
I like that. Use experimentation to learn and optimization to validate. And
Yeah, to me, together is optimization because in the end, we're all optimizing.
yeah, it's both of them. I
Yeah.
like that. Use experimentation to learn. I never heard nobody saying that. I like it. So, after all your experience in this field, one would argue that you've built a very strong heuristic muscle. So, what do you do when you have new tests that you probably might have some sort of foresight and you would be like, I know how this is gonna turn out? Do you, how do you deal with that? Like to treat experiments and tests as something new? Because obviously it can be different than what you think.
I trust the data. I've learned over the years that it doesn't make sense for me to already believe upfront what the result will be. I've seen too, and of course the problem also with experiment results is that there will be false positives in your data. So you are measuring an effect, but there is no effect, and also there will be false negatives. So you're measuring inconclusive, but in reality there is an effect. So that makes it even harder to trust, but you use this to make decisions, which is a good thing to do. I just go in like a fool. I don't have opinions up front. It's if there's evidence backing up that we should experiment on this, that could be interesting direction to look at or to validate it. Then let's do it and see what it will bring.
Why do you think people are sacrificing and compromising rigors and statistical relevance for speed?
Are they?
They are. I watched an interview recently. In there were two e-commerce professionals, and they were saying just run a test until you get the results that you want. just run something, just do it. And
Yeah.
it's like people say it doesn't have to be like the sample size thing, for instance. Like I posted about this the other day. um you want a survey, you want to do surveys in e-commerce, you need some sort of sample size to validate what happened. And people are saying no, but it's impossible to get 200 people or 400 people or whatever. And I agree, sometimes it is hard to get that many people to answer, but like what's the solution? Because if you need something right away, how do you navigate that? How do you tell your manager, boss, just give me a chance to run this properly because it needs time? And I see this happening big companies to small companies, especially in e-commerce. Like how does a person that's hired in an experimentation team navigate the waters with their management, for them to understand that these things take time, because that's the mathematical equation of
Yeah, yeah. Of course, trustworthy experimentation using data and statistics in the right way is really hard to do. And I sometimes even recommend not to explain stuff because it's just too difficult to explain, which is sad. But I think that there are two issues here. You have people that are doing the actual work, so the practitioners, not having the right approach. So just if something turns out to be significant at some point, they will stop the experiment, not checking for sample ratio mismatch, all that kind of stuff. That's bad. So they should be trained better. But I think the biggest worry is in the manager not willing to include experimentation in the way of working. I'm at the level where I gave up companies that are blocking evidence-based growth or experimentation. So I just don't work for them. I don't have the energy to convince them because I've learned over the years that they're really hard to convince. If they really strongly believe in their approach, which is different than the way it should be, according to my opinion, it's going to be a long fight. It's all negative energy, and I don't want to waste this time. I just rather help a company that gets it and wants to move forward. I know some people will take the time to try to convince them. I've learned that like after 2 years they will be replaced by a new manager, and the new manager gets it, and then it moves on. But the thing that always helps is to look at the big examples in the industry and explain how they do this, explain the number of people they're having, explain, like, for instance, Ronnie Kohavi sharing a lot about his work in the past at Microsoft, the number of data scientists in the experimentation teams, the way how they onboarded other teams within Microsoft, because they started at Bing, but also how they onboarded Office and Skype and so on, to also run experiments, and the learnings from that. And that took years and years and years and a lot of people. So some people have the energy to try to convince other companies, and it's good to use those examples. But if someone is just not willing to change, why put the energy in changing? Even if you are, especially if you're in a bigger company, I like the model of not having a centralized team that's running optimization or A/B experimentation by themselves. I like the setup, if you're big enough, where a centralized team is functioning as a center of excellence, helping other teams to run experiments. So product teams, engineering teams, marketing teams, and so on, they should run experiments themselves. And then you will have some teams that are really eager to do this, and some teams that don't want to do this. Just focus on the teams that want to do this. At some point, they will start outperforming the teams that are not willing to do this. Focus your energy on where there is positive energy would always be my advice. And then, of course, you should make it as easy as possible. Like every time experimentation or validation is in the way of the speed, of the agility of the team that really wants to use experimentation, then try to understand what's going on and how you can optimize the process. Because product teams should do what they need to do, marketing teams should do what they need to do, but they should embed experimentation. So you should make it as easy as possible for them to run those experiments. But that works way better if you have teams that really want to do this instead of having someone that has a different mindset. And I've stopped convincing them. I just move on to where the positive energy is.
got it, got it. On this topic, I asked you this when we met, when we had that delicious rhubarb gin, very good gin. And I asked you what are your thoughts on democratizing A/B testing and experimentation. I like what you answered back then because, and I want to explain why I liked it. You are, from what I can gather, you're a very authentic person. So it's normal for you to, want this to see the same thing around you. And I remember you were saying that it's very important that when you work in this field, it's important to be truthful about what you know, but also be open for people to teach you and learn from others. And it's just the community, feeling. Every day I see, waves of people getting into experimentation. Like it's very sexy to be in experimentation right now. But at the same time, there's so much content that is very hard to be able to discern what's good and what I should follow versus, what's not maybe the best approach for me. And I want to ask you, like, what's the best way for two questions? Like, what's the best way for people that are new to this to navigate through what's happening on social media? But also, like, for the people that are sort of popular right now in the industry, like, what are some things that people should focus on sharing to help the ones that are learning from them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, good question. I remember this discussion. I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I've made all the mistakes you can make. That's not true. I've made lots of mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes and learn from it. So if you look at, I just told you about the fact that I will not spend energy to a manager that's not willing to take the experimentation look of working, would just not invest the time. But these are all new people to the industry that are eager to learn and understand this, and they want to grow. So I would love to help them. Because they also they need time. Learning proper optimization, experimentation, optimizing distant units, it takes time. You need experience, and you should be allowed to make the mistakes. And that's the discussion we had, because the problem nowadays is on the one hand, lots of people just posting wisdom based on 2 years of experience and bragging about the fact that they know everything, which they don't, because they didn't made enough mistakes yet. But that's fine. But then just post, I'm in this field for 2 years, this is what I'm working on, and I'm seeing this, and then be open for feedback on people responding to this that clearly are seeing that something is wrong and are helping you out. But this also means that if you are an experienced person, that if you see someone posting something on whatever social channel like LinkedIn, who is clearly making a mistake in the approach, statistical or whatsoever, then just don't flame them down immediately. Just be humble and reply with what you have learned. This data, the traffic split is really far off. If it was intended like a 50-50 split, but your data is split like 60%, 40%, that doesn't really make sense unless it was intentional. So it could be that there is a SRM error. And maybe you have not heard of SRM errors. Here's a link to a nice article about SRM, and keep on doing the good work. So that's also like, don't forget that these are all people new to the industry that are eager to learn, but also should have the chance to learn and make the mistakes, and just help them and speed the process up faster. Because I think that's the good thing that the old people like me can do. It took us like many years to make all these mistakes, and now there is some experience in the market, so you can speed up the average quality of the market by sharing the mistakes you've made in the past. And some mistakes you just have to make before you really understand and feel the pain and move on and have learned from it. But yeah, I'm not really happy with the way the community is communicating now and then on social channels. And it makes sense. Once an industry grows, lots of people come in. It starts with a small group of people, and then they move up in experience, and it's more like a pyramid. So the new people entering are in way bigger numbers. So what happens? The average quality of your industry, the average knowledge level of your industry, will go down once it grows. And once it stops growing, it will go up again. But if you are in the top of the pyramid, your task is to make sure that all these happy people are doing this the right way. So all the companies they're working at will apply experimentation in the right way and not just throw it away at some point because they're using it wrongly.
I like the way you explain it as a pyramid, because in the beginning, when you have the people that are with the most experience is like few to many, like few people are speaking to many, and then the more the community grows is many to many, and then it's many to few, basically. It goes back, the pyramid turns back, and it's a few people that are very new going to the community, and everyone is So it's hard, but I since we talked, I really like your point of view, and I think again, like, you should be open to learn. I've learned and unlearned so many things in my last, years, and I just posted the other day about how I thought RFM is gonna do something. So yeah, it's, you learn and you have to be humble, and I think, again, as you said, experimentation is learning, and that has everything to do with who you are. Also, it's you're learning and trying different things. Yeah, I think I have one more question in this realm before I'm gonna, ask you more intrusive personal questions. I mean, the reason why I started this podcast and it's called Standard Deviation is because I started playing with learning statistics and learning different things about the world, but I'm learning them from a psychology perspective and philosophical perspective versus a mathematical one. And I'm reading this book called The End of Average. I read, actually, I'm rereading it. It's my favorite book. And in it, it's explained how the concept of the average person came about. It was this Belgian scientist called Ketele that he just used population, data, and to create what would the average person, would look like or would be. And everything that was falling under average was considered an error, and everything that was above average, a few years later, Francis Galton was calling eminencies. So I think it's very interesting if you think about this concept from a human being perspective, society perspective, and then you move it to experimentation and marketing. And you realize that you are working with averages to optimize user experiences, not users experience, user experience, right? It's not plural. So it's very hard to identify uniqueness and individuality if you compare a group's average with one person, and you're gonna say, I'm gonna be very granular, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
whatever, but we're just using averages. And I had a data scientist in my podcast that worked at Uber, and she told me that averages do not exist. She told me it's a fake, but why do we use them then?
Yeah, it's I love brands that have like really strong communication and are really focusing on a specific subsegment of the market, like a specific skater brand that's more for like the outgoing skater people, because it makes it so easy to optimize because you have one segment to optimize. But if you are Airbnb, the whole world is using you. So if you then make an average experience, it doesn't make sense because you're not helping specific segments. And of course, it's all about how much data do you have. If you have a brand focused on a niche group, you have not a lot of data, but you're focusing on one group. If you are a brand focusing on like everyone, you have lots of data if you're successful, and then you're able to segment the journeys. The biggest problem is always with digital. Are you able to optimize your digital experience or your full experience, customer experience, to several segments? Or is that too expensive and can you only maintain a system for everyone? If you can only maintain a system for everyone, you're going to optimize for the average user because that in the end will bring you the most, unless you start focusing on a specific segment and grow your product from there. But if you are able to offer multiple experiences or segmented experiences, then you have to look at specific groups. And then, and of course, if you also build in an e-commerce shop that can offer relevance based on personal behavior, that it almost becomes a personal journey. But in the end, it will be segments. So if you are in travel and you're focusing on the whole market, you probably will offer separate journeys for families with children, older people, young people, and not only on the product level, but also on the design level, the whole experience, communication, and so on, and maybe split up in several brands. But no, but in the end, indeed, the value of optimization. I've seen many experiments that if you look at the whole population, the outcome is inconclusive. And then you dive in, and then you see, oh, that's interesting. Mobile users coming from all our ad campaigns are like outperforming a lot in this variation, and but altogether it's not enough to outperform the whole group. But that's kind of fascinating. Now, of course, then the experiment was already probably tailored on a specific hypothesis, so that experiment should have been triggered on only mobile users ad campaigns, because the way how more you focus, how easy it is to get results. Sidestep. If you, for instance, look at a banking website, most people who come to the homepage of their bank will go to the login area to check their balances, and that's like 99% of the behavior, and only 1% has a different task. So if you optimize something even below the fold of the homepage, only 1% of the users will see this change. So you should focus your experiment and trick your experiment only on that specific group, because that's where you can make the difference. And that other 99% in the control and the variation will not show any different behavior in the control compared to the variation. So if you're able to implement this, to implement different journeys based on behavior or specific segmental groups of your user base, then it really makes sense to start optimizing in those segments, because indeed the averages are lying.
It's really hard to think about it because it doesn't make sense to do an experiment for 10 people and to implement something for 10 people when you have 100,000 users.
True.
But at the same time, if you know, and me being philosophical again, I'm looking at how these concepts of average and under average and above average have affected the way we segment ourselves with horoscope, with Myers Briggs test, because we're taking those tests, or we're a Cancer or we're a Sagittarius, but then we automatically segment ourselves there, and our results of a Myers Briggs test are compared to thousands of other people from different backgrounds, different I don't know, geographies, different lives than us, but like we are considered the same
Yeah,
once we're in that group.
I'll ignore the scientific quality of Myers Briggs. I like
This is one example.
I like the ocean model more, what I've done in the past is that if you have like two main groups, let's take the travel example again. Like you have the younger people that are focusing more on ease of use, and then you have an older group where certainty is really important. You can build your checkout template in a way where the certainty messaging and communication is not part of the direct flow, but it's on the page. And you know that young people are more like scanning the website, going fast, and older people are reading a lot. So in this way, you can have the certainty for the older people, which will be recognized by the older people. The young people will just miss it and skip over it and have this nice flow to continue. So in that way, you can still build your website for everyone, but in that website, looking at specific segments and what's needed. But then, of course, the experiment will be run on the full population. But of course, if you're able to segment once they buy on age, you could tell if it makes a difference on the older age and not on the younger age if it's not influenced. And then you can easier see a result and still implement it, even if the total result seems inconclusive.
I have one more question on this topic. Let's see. So your son is 18, right? So that means he's in the last year of high school.
No, he started at university already. He's in his second year.
Okay, let's imagine he will. Let's go back. He's in the last year of high school.
Yeah,
And do you have the baccalaureate exam in Netherlands as well?
yeah, you have some sort of a final exam. Yeah.
Great. So your son, I obviously I don't know your son, but I'm assuming he's very smart. He's very charismatic. He has his own just like my son. His very specific things. So when he takes the final exam, his results to that exam are also compared to all the other kids, right? So he's gonna be scored on a general knowledge of different kids. but it has nothing to do with how gifted he might be in math or in I don't know, language or linguistic or academics or whatever. It doesn't matter. So and then based on those results, he's gonna be placed in a college or something like that. I don't know exactly how it is in the Netherlands, but in Romania, you take your exam, and based on those results, you're gonna have access or not to a college education, be it better or worse. Like, what are your thoughts about how those things are being calculated? Do you think they still make sense for the world we're living in?
But we have a different system. That already on high school you will have different directions that will point you out to university or other following up studies. And then at university you can just apply. And if there are lots of people applying, it will become a lottery. But the
Mm-hmm.
higher your scores are, the more chance you have of being accepted.
Yeah,
Um, um,
but do
yeah,
you get what I'm aiming at, right? What I'm reaching at?
the thing I don't like about the whole way, at least in the Netherlands, people are being graded, or students are being graded, is that they want you to become good at everything. And if someone has like a 9 for mathematics, but a 4, well, we have a 1 to 10 scale. So
Yeah,
9 is really high, 4 is really low. So if you have a 9 for mathematics and a 4 for German language, then most schools will say, okay, let's get the German language to a 6, which is like the average score. And then it could be that mathematics will go down from 9 to 8. And that's an approach I don't really like, because I would say, okay, this person is not really talented for German. Let's stop with German and make it go even from a 4 to a 1. And let's take a look at a 9 for mathematics and make it a 10. And especially if this person likes mathematics, I think that there should be a passion there. And then make them a specialist instead of a. That would be my approach. But we have a different system in that case. Um, well, I'm not I'm not a specialist in
it's
school.
something that's been like obsessing me for
Yeah,
a while, thinking about how kids are being graded or how schools are accepting it. It's very old school. It's very
yeah.
18th century.
If you're an average student, then you have a bigger chance
Yeah,
on going to university than if you are a student that's really excelling at certain parts and not excelling at other parts.
yeah. You cannot go about your life like you can be very good in maths or computers, but you fail a language test or something, or
Yeah.
a written test, and those things are not optimized to who you are as a person. But talking about things that are exciting for you, not for me, tell me, what is something that is currently challenging you spiritually and intellectually?
That's a good question. Um, it- work is still kind of in let's first take the work approach, because we're still talking about work stuff. Um, I'm intrigued by experimentation culture and how to build up experimentation culture in companies. My background is in management science, which I did study, and also in my first years of work, I managed a lot of stuff at companies before I really saw that I'm way more like a practitioner that wants to dive in deeply. But now I'm getting older. I'm more intrigued again by organizational behavior and how to implement experimentation culture. And is that something you can implement, or does it already exist? So that's intriguing me, and I'm running a large survey now to collect more data on this, because I'm also intrigued by the scientific approach. Together with some colleagues, I wrote my first paper this year that got published. I was allowed to present this at Gothenburg University in Sweden, which was a fun experience, because then I.
Is it published?
Yeah, it's published.
Oh, send it to me.
Yeah, it's published on ACM. You have to pay. I'll send you the paper, which is
Okay.
more easy. Um, it's in the scientific journal, so you have to pay for access. I'll send you the draft. Um, the What I liked is it brought me back to high school and university again, because if I'm on stage, uh, I've also learned by writing this paper that some of my claims are also based on experience slash gut feel. And of course, I've been working for 100 different organizations in the experimentation program, so there is some truth behind it. But if you really dive in the numbers, sometimes A is happening at 60 companies, but B is happening at 40 companies. But then it feels like, oh, A is the right approach, but it's not a significant result. So the writing the paper teaches me to even more strong backup everything I'm sharing on stage and in articles with proper research. So that's really triggering me. Like, okay, spend more time in doing more research to understand how companies are growing experimentation culture, publish more about this, and start learning again. And so talking to the scientific community is interesting from a quality of study and publishing approach. Because in a blog post, you can write whatever you want to do. On LinkedIn, you can say, well, this is my opinion. But if you write a paper and have to present it for a couple of professors, then you really have to back your stuff up with proper research, which is a good thing. So that's something I really liked, and that's intriguing me a lot. But on personal level, well, my kids are getting older. Like I said, going to university, I got 3 kids. But slowly we're coming to the phase where they will start moving out. And for the past 18 years, there's always been kids around. So, and before kids, the life you have before kids and then start kids. But now it's become a different transition. At some point, they will be moved out. Like the oldest one, or maybe even the oldest two, they don't want to go on holiday again with mom and dad for like 5 weeks. That's like way too long. Like they can bear us for 1 week or something. So it will be different, and also the role you have as a parent will be different. So that's an interesting experience, and kind of nervous about it also, because you will have a new role and you will have like a way more long distance relationship. How are you gonna manage this? And at some you don't want the kids to move out, which I learned now. But I remember when I was young and 18, I really wanted to move out. And of course, they will have the same mindset. So there will be a new challenging thing going on personal level.
Yeah, it's crazy because as a parent, I'm far away from that, but I'm also thinking that it's probably really hard because now I'm joking around because I feel so overwhelmed, and I'm telling my husband, like, after they move out, I'm gonna have a proper midlife crisis, and I'll let you have an affair, and I'll buy a car, or I'll have an affair too, like something crazy. And my husband is saying, "Nah, you're gonna be crying when they're leaving out of the house." So yeah, I get it, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's good because you will have more time with your wife, and you can, rediscover things, and, having time for yourself.
Yeah, there will be a whole new situation because with having 3 kids, the time you spend together is way less. Well, we have time for ourselves, but then one of us will be around with the kids, and now
Yeah,
already now,
exactly.
yeah, you start having more, which is a good thing. It's
And
like,
having free time at the same time.
yeah, yeah, true.
I
So
don't even know how that feels anymore to be free. Yeah, it's
this is exactly why in your work you should do something that has your passion, because so much time is involved in work. It should bring energy and not cost you energy.
I feel that. Tan, thank you for coming. Where can people find you, follow you, connect with you, and definitely not send you sales messages on LinkedIn?
No, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect over there, follow whatsoever. I have my own personal website, which has all the links to all the channels. Feel free to
Yeah,
connect. Please be aware on the fact that I have more messages coming in than I can reply to myself. But I'll try to reply to everything as much as I can. And if I'm ignoring you, it's not because of you. Just try again. It's just because it's too much. But I like your messaging. So if you want to reach out, working experimentation, and are passionate and eager to learn, just reach out.
thank you so much, Tan.